If living in Mexico is too expensive and too difficult, then why are so many people still moving out here? What do they know that you don't? Hey guys, how's it going, and welcome back to another episode. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the real cost of living out here in Mexico. Yes, it's true. Mexico is getting more expensive each and every day, but still not as expensive as it is in the United States of America. I recently did a video on cost of living out here in Mexico, and I showed you guys that one can easily live in Mexico for around 1,500 US dollars a month. As you guys saw in that video, the main reason I was able to keep it under 1,500 USD a month was because my rent is only around 300 US dollars. I also do not have an expensive car payment or insurance of any kind or any other added expenses that are commonplace for people that are living in the USA. Now let's say hypothetically, if I were to be paying a similar rent that I would be paying in the USA here in Mexico and had a monthly car payment, had insurance, plus other expenses, well, then all of a sudden my monthly budget would jump from 1,500 US dollars a month to around 3,000 US dollars or even more. So yes, it is easy to see how many people in my audience were arguing whether 1,500 US dollars a month was enough or not. You can easily see how quickly Mexico can be just as expensive as the USA. In fact, for more context, I will link that video at the end of this one and pin it in the comment section so you can reference it later and see exactly what all of the expenses are that constitute 1,500 US dollars a month. And you can go on ahead and add and subtract, what your own needs are every single month to that budget, so you can get an estimate as to what it would probably cost you to live out here in Mexico. Now, besides cost of living, the fact is that Mexico is just not affordable as it once was. We all know that moving to Mexico is not easy. In fact, on this channel, I try to give everyone a reality check as to what the actual difficulties are in moving to Mexico. I don't do it to discourage you. I do it to mentally prepare you as much as possible so that you have the best possible outcome when you finally do decide to make the move to Mexico. As I've mentioned before on the channel, just moving to the other side of town isn't easy. So you can imagine how difficult moving to another country will be. Even with resources such as the videos on this channel and my website, which has tons of free information on how you can make the move to Mexico, it's still not an easy endeavor for anyone to deal with. The reality is that people are willing to pay a premium to live in Mexico these days. I think the misconception that Mexico is a cheap, dangerous third world country are slowly starting to disappear as more people are starting to realize that the USA is actually closer to being a third world country these days. In fact, the USA is more like a 2-star motel charging people 5-star luxury hotel prices. Bruh. So with that said, you already know, most people have always been willing to pay a premium for better quality and services. So why is moving to Mexico any different? Most of you already know that people in Mexico have a higher quality of life than you do in the USA. In fact, you never hear people complain about, Europe is too expensive, or, Australia or other highly desirable locations. So why can't people wrap their heads around the fact that Mexico is now a place where people from all over the world want to be? And because of that, well, it's going to demand a higher price, just simply because of supply and demand. This popularity Mexico is having these days is creating more demand and in turn, higher prices. In fact, one could argue that Mexico has been underpriced for a very long time. Mexicans and foreigners have discovered the riches that Mexico has to offer, and because of this, it has an increased demand on the supply of goods and services in Mexico, which in turn has caused a progression of natural price discovery to happen, thus increasing the price of everything, since people have figured out that Mexico has an abundance of high quality goods and services that many people want. As people struggle to find a better alternative to the USA these days, many have already found it in Mexico. People these days in the USA are being told that they have to lower their expectations, make more sacrifices, and work harder for the same or even less amount of goods and services than they're used to. Many have chosen not to accept this and have decided to move to a country like Mexico. By doing so, they don't have to worry about lowering their standards anymore or even their quality of life. They can continue to afford their way of life without having to make any more sacrifices by staying in their home country. Mexico offers better health care, better quality of life, and more freedom, just to name a few things. Plus, all the high-end luxuries you could ever want, such as iPhones, Teslas, or simply a really good private school for your children to attend. People from all over the world have realized that Mexico has it all and then some. The new American dream is here in Mexico. And as many Mexicans will point out, Mexico is America. Therefore, the American dream is still alive and well. It's just that the thing is, it's now in Mexico and not in the United States of America anymore. So if Mexico is not as affordable as it once was, and it is extremely difficult to move to, then why are so many Americans still coming to Mexico? Well, the reality is that there are many reasons as to why many people are taking that plunge and placing their bets on Mexico instead of the good old US of A. For many people that are moving to Mexico these days, it's not even about the cost of living, but instead quality of life. If your main concern and reason for leaving the USA and moving abroad is to reduce your cost of living, then perhaps Mexico might not be the right place for you. But if you are interested in significantly increasing your quality of life, living in a familiar culture, and being close to the USA, just to name a few reasons, then Mexico is the right fit for you. For many Americans out there, speaking Spanish is a non-issue. Either you probably learned it in school or you learned it at home if you grew up in a Spanish or Hispanic household, or you might have even learned it from your friends as you were growing up, or even from your coworkers at your job. Either way, learning Spanish is much easier for the majority of Americans than it is to learn another language such as Thai or even Japanese, for example. For me, that was one of the main reasons I chose to stay close to home and move to Mexico, since I already knew the language and since I grew up in a Cuban household. Not only did I speak Spanish, but I also grew up in a very similar culture, so it was actually very easy for me to assimilate into everyday Mexican life. I know there are many other people with similar backgrounds who also feel the same way, and that is why they choose Mexico. If you grew up in a Latino household in the USA, then moving to Mexico will be much easier for you than moving to any other non-Spanish speaking country. And with that said, there's also a lot of Mexicans that live in the USA that were either born and raised in the USA or they went to the USA from a very young age, and they've never been to Mexico outside of just some family vacations or whatever. And a lot of Mexicans that are just struggling, or they, unfortunately cannot achieve that American dream in the USA anymore. Well, a lot of Mexicans are also moving back home. In fact, I'm pretty sure that there are more Mexicans moving back into Mexico than Mexicans leaving Mexico to live in the USA. Now, I can't speak for all Mexicans, because I do know that there are increasingly a larger amount of Mexicans that are now living abroad. In fact, my wife Christian is always telling me of all these friends of hers, or other YouTubers or content creators that are Mexican that just happen to live in many other parts of the world, not in the USA. I mean, living in Australia, living in Germany, living in India, living in all kinds of countries. And it is very interesting to see how they perceive living in those countries, and how most of them end up missing Mexico very, very much. And once they're done, with their work or their studies or whatever it is that they're doing abroad, most of them, they cannot wait. to come back home to Mexico and live in Mexico. And for a lot of Mexicans that moved to the USA at some point to just make some money or even achieve that American dream and start a family and live in the USA, well, again, you guys already know, if you as Americans are looking to leave the USA, imagine all the Mexicans that already had a home and family and friends out here in Mexico, and they only went to the USA to make some money, and now, well, they're not making any money because, well, you know, you're not making any money either. So, well, a lot of them have either made their money and brought it back to Mexico and constructed their home of their dreams or started the business that they always wanted to, or they just cut their losses and, you know, just came back home and just made do with whatever they made. But regardless, it doesn't matter. The point I'm making is that there's a lot of people that are moving to Mexico that speak Spanish, because there is a lot of Spanish speaking countries all over the world. And so that is another misconception that a lot of people just have out there. The fact that everyone just thinks that the only people moving to Mexico are Canadians and Americans, but that's not true. Canadians and Americans are a large group of people that are moving out here, but increasingly there's even larger groups of people, like I said, including other Mexicans that are now moving into Mexico. And so obviously all of these people, they speak Spanish, and so they already have an upper hand on you if you don't speak any Spanish. But again, even if you do not speak any Spanish, Mexico is still a great option for you. If you have a family with kids, most of you are not happy in the direction the USA is going these days. You are willing to sacrifice your comfort for the benefit of your children. Even though it might be a challenge for you to learn Spanish and get used to a new culture, the same cannot be said about your kids. Most children that move to Mexico learn Spanish very, very quickly, and they are able to assimilate a lot easier than you. Not only will they be speaking better Spanish than you, but they will also enjoy a lot more freedoms to be kids out here in Mexico. They will also be making many more friends out here in Mexico. In the USA, it is a lot more difficult to do that because, well, everyone out there lives in an over-sterilized environment. And the children that grow up in those environments, well, you already know, they don't grow up right. Out here in Mexico, it's like it used to be, like most of us grew up, which is basically, you know, most kids are not at home playing video games all day. They're actually outside at the park or doing some sort of, you know, communal event or hanging out with their friends or whatever it is, but they're actually living a much healthier life out here. Again, out here in Mexico, your children, they're all going to be able to be in a much healthier and safer environment. This is a much better place to raise your children than it is in the USA these days. It pains me to say it, but you know it as well as I do. And for many parents, their main concern is to be able to raise their children in the best possible environment that they can. So for many parents, that alone is reason enough for them to move to Mexico. With that said, many modern Americans these days hate real freedom. This is why many Americans that move to Mexico resent ever moving to Mexico in the first place. They simply cannot handle actual freedom. Most Americans these days love laws, rules, and regulation. They love control. They love comfort, and they despise actual freedom. I know this is not the case with every American. In fact, if you feel like you have lost all of your freedoms in the USA, then moving to Mexico is the perfect solution for you. For many Americans who understand the true concept of freedom, they know that this is non-existent in the USA these days. They yearn to live free like they do in Mexico. They understand that the definition of anarchy simply means to live without rulers, which, if you know anything about how life is out here in Mexico, authority does not have the unlimited and unchecked power that they do in the USA. Many people just want to live in peace and harmony and are tired of living under tyranny. Many people are moving to Mexico simply because of freedom. People are also moving to Mexico because they are in search of more civility. In other words, a better culture than where they are coming from at the moment. As an American, you know fully well how much of a toxic environment it has become. things just keep going from bad to worse, and there is no end in sight. I used to remember how stressed I constantly was living in the USA and how draining each interaction with most people was. Ever since I've been living in Mexico, these are non-issues. Most of the stress has melted away, and I actually enjoy most interactions with people these days because they are actually genuine and not unhealthy and toxic like they were back home in the US. The reality is that it's a little hard for me to explain, and it's just best for you to experience it. Once you actually experience it, you know exactly what I mean. This is why there's so many people out there that are always saying how nice people in Mexico are. In fact, how nice people are abroad, in other countries. Sure, Mexican people are extremely nice, very nice. Next level nice. But the reality is that when you're coming from such a horrible and toxic environment as the USA and you come to Mexico, well, it doesn't matter how mean or bad a Mexican might be, you might interpret it as nice. Because compared to what we're used to back home, everyone out here is nice. Now, these are just some of the many reasons why so many people are moving to Mexico these days. It doesn't seem to matter how difficult or expensive it is perceived to be. The reality is that most people are more than willing to pay the price. People are looking for a better life, which is something they can find by moving to Mexico. The longer you wait to move to Mexico, the more difficult it will become. Not only will it keep getting more and more difficult for you to leave your home country, but eventually Mexico might not be accessible to you, just like it might not be realistic to move to Switzerland these days. Eventually, everyone will figure out what an amazing place Mexico is, and by then, it will be too late. At some point in the future, Mexico will become an exclusive place to live in and will no longer be as affordable or even feasible to actually move to. Those of you who have already moved to Mexico or are on your way to Mexico are the pioneers and the trailblazers that eventually everyone will look to as geniuses. The ones who have already taken the leap of faith are already enjoying the fruits of their labors. So what are you still waiting for? How many more videos are you going to watch? How many more articles are you going to read? You already know what you want and what you need to do. So stop thinking about it and start working on it. Things take time. And if you have a lot you have to take care of before making that move, stop procrastinating and start doing it. Time flies, and if you just wait for the last minute to start, it will already be too late. Plan accordingly and you will be a monumental success. The biggest regret most people have once they eventually move to Mexico is that they should have just moved out here sooner. Instead of continuing to struggle with things you hate, why not focus all that energy and struggle with something you love? By deciding to take on this adventure, you have already made the choice that you no longer want to settle for the life you have, and you are willing to work hard and sacrifice to achieve the life that you want and you deserve. No pain, no gain. Don't be the last one to realize that you should have moved to Mexico sooner. Your new adventure is waiting for you. You will only have yourself to blame if you stay behind and regret it forever. With all that being said, if you are looking for more information or more videos like this on moving to Mexico, I really encourage you guys to check out the rest of my channel and check out my website and check out all the links that I have provided down below. I have tons of information. I have tons of tips. I got more stuff than you can ever even imagine. I answer questions that you didn't even know you needed an answer to. So please, I implore you to check out the rest of my channel if you haven't already. And again, do some searches on my channel, on my website, and just check out everything I have available for you for free at your disposal, so you can be as best prepared as possible when you finally decide to make this move. I want to give a big shout out to all of the people who help contribute to the show, whether it's by being a member on YouTube, on Patreon, or buy me a coffee, or you just send a few bucks through PayPal or Cash App or whatever it is you do. Thank you so much for your patronage and helping sponsor the show. You allow me to continue to make all this free content to be able to help out all those out there who cannot afford a one-on-one consultation or can barely afford to even pay rent. So again, thank you so much for helping maintain my lights on and for helping pay it forward for those out there that still need all that help to get out of Dodge and they cannot afford to spend any extra money on unnecessary things. This is again why I provide everything for free, because I once was one of those people that came out here with nothing and I had to figure it out all on my own, and I was able to. In fact, not only was I able to, but I was able to create this channel and be able to again pay it forward myself and be able to really help other people. And so we're just continuing this whole thing. So again, thank you so much for everyone else out there, the new and old subscribers. Thank you to everyone in the comment section, always helping out others by answering questions or giving even more details on the subjects I am covering. I am just trying to build a community here that we can all benefit from by helping each other out the best way we can contribute to the show and to the community. So again, you guys are the real heroes. Thank you for all you do. So, with all that being said, you already know the deal. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to please like, please subscribe, please share, please hit that bell icon. But more importantly than anything else, please stay awesome. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.